And so, Mayor Cory Booker. That football picture there is making me feel like I can leap up on stages again. But as I'm finding out I've pulled hamstrings and thinking I can still go out around Newark and play basketball at night in some of the public housing projects, I've been humbled. But please keep that up there and give me a copy of it so I can take it around with me this weekend. I'm out of breath. I ran here. It is so good to be here. I do not want to talk about policy. I do not want to talk about some of the important substantive things that we're fighting for. I'm very happy that this is about the spirit, it's about hope. And if I can recount some of the realities of my life, which is something that my family used to tell me all the time when I used to go to, when I went to Stanford, went to Oxford, went to Yale, and here my chest was all out. My parents used to always bring me back down to earth and said, remind me, that said, boy, never forget you can learn more from a woman on the 5th floor of the projects than you ever can from one of these fancy professors. And so, while a lot of this next generation of African Americans and even Americans in general are getting opportunities that weren't dreamed of from our parents, the most valuable lessons, the most sustaining spiritual strength of our communities really has been around for a long time, and more importantly, has been exalted by our ancestors in ways that we must begin to replicate now. We drink deeply from wells that we did not dig. We eat fruit from trees that we did not plant. This nation got where it is today because they had this idea of collective sacrifice. That we are a country that was founded in perfect ideals, but a savagely imperfect reality. And that the history of our country is a history of ordinary Americans being willing to do extraordinary things to make real on that promise of democracy. This is who we are. We come from a people who bled the beaches of Normandy to Midway for us. We come from a people who bled the southern soil red for us, for our civil rights and many of the luxuries that we now enjoy. We are a people that has come from a great legacy, and my frustration sometimes is somehow we've dimmed our view of what is possible. I have these elders in my community who are like saints in my life, who constantly challenge me to see me for who I truly am, to see Newark for what it really is, to see America for what it really is. People who are unflagging in their love of America, and they have every reason, many of them, not to love it. Some of the most ugly stories of America I've heard from my elders in Newark, but yet they still believe, like Langston Hughes, they stand proudly and say that America never was America to me, but I swear this oath, America will be. I remember my first encounter was with this amazing woman who's still a significant part of my life, and I know she's going to be calling me in my ear later on. She's just turned 80 years old. When I was this arrogant Yale law student, I came down and started working in inner city Newark in a tough neighborhood. We have these beautiful sections of our city, but I chose to live on a challenged street. And I remember the first thing she said to me when I told her I wanted to help her, as if I was going to be the change agent instead of tapping into the source that was already there. And she said to me, boy, first describe what you see around you. And I looked around and I said, I see high-rise projects, I see abandoned building over here where they use crack and things like that. I just described the neighborhood. And she shook her head and she says, well, you'll never ever be able to help me. And I said, why? And she says, because son, you need to understand that the world you see outside of you is a reflection of what you have inside of you. If you're one of those people who only sees darkness, despair, and problems, that's all there's ever going to be. But if you're one of those people who sees hope, who sees opportunity, who sees love, who sees the face of God, then you can be a transformative force. Then you can be a change agent. And this is the constant theme of my political life. Every time I've come to a point where I've begun to indulge in that which I should never indulge in, cynicism or skepticism or doubt about what our country can achieve, I've got these leaders in my city, these amazing people who smack me upside my head and challenge me what to do. My favorite experience of my life, in fact, the seminal moment of my life, if I can share it with you, my political career, happened after we won this huge upset. I was a 20-something-year-old kid, won one of the biggest upsets in our city, became the youngest person ever elected in my city's history. I'm very upset that Oscar James Jr., now the new youngest person ever elected in my city, is here. Now, Oscar, please wave. Young buck that you are. But at that point, the record was 28, not 24. But I got elected with all of this enthusiasm and went down to City Hall and experienced the worst year of my life, the worst year of my professional career. The machine was doing everything it could to grind me out, things you couldn't make up that many of you wouldn't believe. I hope some people here saw a street fight, but the reality is that I was getting tickets on my car everywhere I parked as a city councilman, even in front of City Hall with all the other council people. I was getting tickets on my car. My employees weren't getting paid, and you can't even make this up. The city police, we were able to expose, were tapping my phones. Everything I tried to change as a legislature, we controlled the budget, and I worked so hard on the budget to find out that they really didn't pass the city budget until about the 12th month of the fiscal year, so I was just passing a historical document. I was so frustrated because all these people who elected me on this idea of hope and change began to be frustrated with me. I represented the Central Ward in Newark with some of the toughest census tracts in our country, people who believed in me so much and put me in City Hall, and then I began to believe that they were seeing no results as a result of it. At the end of my first year, frustration, I gained weight, I had migraine headaches. At the end of my first year, I was so frustrated because I got a call from this amazing woman named Elaine Sewell, who was a tenant president with some high-rise projects in the northern part of the district I represented. And she was upset because some drug dealers had attacked the local security company that was supposed to protect these high-rises. And she was just frustrated. She called me up, and all I could do was parrot back what the mayor and my adversary at that point had used to say to me. Ms. Sewell, I'm sorry, I can't do anything. I'm the legislator, not an administrator. I can't send police out there. And she and I just started yelling at each other and arguing. This was my friend, this was my elder. And we both hung up the phone frustrated, and I was done. I slammed the phone down. I left City Hall. I walked up the street back to Brick Towers where I was living at that point. And of course, who do I see there? The chief head smacker upper, Miss Virginia Jones. And she's standing there because now she stands like a sentinel in front of these buildings. Because we got the slumlord convicted in federal court. We're able to get some of the drug dealers off the streets into productive things. And she's standing in front of the building. She sees me. She goes, "What's wrong with you, boy?" And I go, "I'm tired, Miss Jones. I don't have time." She goes, "You gotta have time. Stop for a second." And I said, "Okay." And she says to me, she goes, "Tell me what's going on." And I told her, I just vented on her, my frustrations, a year full of anger and agony and pain and frustration. And she just looks at me and starts shaking her head. And she goes, "Well, I know what you should do." And I told her all about the thing with Elaine Sewell, and I was all of a sudden, maybe she had an idea. And I said, "Okay, what should I do?" She goes, "I know what you should do." And I'm like, "Okay, Ms. Jones, what should I do?" "I know what you should do." And I say, "Would you just tell me, what should I do?" She looks at me and she goes, "You should do something." "That's it?" She goes, "Yeah, you should do something." And I was frustrated. I turned around with a harumph, marched to my building, and the elevators in my building, it was like a mood ring. They knew what emotion I was in. If I was in a good mood, they'd open up, let me walk on up, ride up in style. If I was in a bad mood, I would always have to walk 16 flights of stairs. So I march up 16 flights, go into my room, and I sit down. Now, I'm a strange guy in many ways, as Oscar James and others could tell you, but one thing is I love the manifestations of faith in man. When I've studied religion, studied in ashrams in India, I'm the only non-Jew, only goy head of a Chabad house in the history of America. I'm very proud of that. But as I walked into my room, I looked over at the Bible in my apartment, and I just opened it up, and it happened to open up in Matthew, and it says, "If you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you can move a mountain." Now, some people don't know. People about to applaud. Yeah, I know that, by the way. The next one's a little trickier because it says below it, but sometimes you have to fast and pray. So I called up Jermaine James. I don't know if Jermaine's here, guys. But Jermaine James was a guy straight out of Hampton University, was serving on my staff, and I called him up. I said, "Get me a tent." And he's like, "A what?" And I said, "Buy me a tent. Meet me out of Garden Spires." And we go out there, we set up this tent, and I go over to Ms. Sewell and others, and I say, "Look, guys, I don't know how we're going to solve this problem, but I promise you I'm not going to leave here until we find a solution." And I said, "Not only that, I'm not going to eat any food until we do." And I talked to the drug dealers. I said, "Fellas, I said, I'm not here to fight you, but I'm not leaving. We can't live like this." And press came out, and I turned to the press and I said, "This is the United States of America." I said, "How can we have places where people live in fear